Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. For first time viewers, thank you guys so much for joining. I hope that you guys will consider staying as we continue to grow our family. From you see me sitting down, this video will be a video of a conversation with you and me. We're going to be going into more detail, as you can see from the title, as it relates to teaching. So I have been teaching here in Canada now for 1 full year. And so from the last video I did a couple of months ago, talking about how you can get your certification coming from outside of Canada, I want to build on that because I got a few questions in the comments, and so I realized that persons are really interested in finding out this information. So I want to know, talk to you guys, as I've been here, as I said, for a year. What are some of the things that you guys can expect as it relates to coming into the Canadian system? And of course, I'm also going to be answering some of the questions from the comments. Now, a very important question most persons will have is that once you are now here in Canada, how can you then translate officially into the Canadian system, having, for example, your independent license? And if you want to find out that information, I invite you to watch the entirety of this video, as I'll be leaving those questions for the end of the video. All right, so again, if you have not watched that video, I posted it a couple of months back. You can just go onto my channel, look for the video where I talk about how you can get your certification here to teach in Canada, and then you can always come back. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps as we continue to grow. Now, what a roller coaster of a ride. Stepping into a new country, into a new educational system, and you're wondering, how will I get through this? Especially for me, I'm at an IB school, which is very different from teaching in a regular school. We have different standards, different requirements, different regulations. And so stepping into that, I was like, okay, I have to learn all of these things so quickly, because honestly, I always say in this country, time flies by so fast. And so I want to talk about all of those things in this video. Now, I might look down a little bit because I have my points written down and I don't want to forget anything as I'm talking to you guys about these things. Now, the first thing I want to get into is, now you have progressed from applying for your license to teach here. You now have your license, or you're at the evaluation stage, as I would have mentioned in my previous video, where you're able to use that evaluation stage to find a job. You now are in the market for a job. How do you go about doing that? In the comment section, persons were asking me, how can I do this outside of Indeed, for example? I would have spoken about this in the past, but I'm going to talk about it just a little bit again. I would recommend going on to different school districts. Just rolling back a little bit, as you know, for the independent license, we can only teach in private facilities. So I'll talk about that. For your certification of qualification, for example, you can move into the public system. But for me, I have to stay within the private system. And so that's why I'm going to refer to that mostly, because that's what I have most of my knowledge in. Regardless of that, I will always recommend you going onto different school boards and just applying to schools directly. When I was doing this, or in the process of doing this, I literally, for the city that I'm living in, I looked at all the private schools, like every single one, and I wrote all of them down. And I said, okay, this is my game plan. I'm just going to reach out. It's always better to do this because you know that your resume is going directly to these principals or to the persons who you want to actually see your resume. How do I know this? When I applied to the school I'm working at now, I was a little bit hesitant because I was living in a different city and it was about a 30-35 minute drive to this city now where my job is. And so I saw it for about a month and I was a little bit reluctant actually to apply for it. But in the end, I realized time was going and I actually came fairly late in the hiring process for schools. As you realize that most schools here, some will hire around the year. For example, if persons are going on maternity leave, etc. Or some persons, if they're looking for new teachers, they do require present teachers to fill out the form. We got our form at my school around February. That's our letter of intention. So basically it's telling the school if you plan to return in September. And so once they have that information, normally by February, March, they are posting these job listings for the following year. So that's why I'm talking about that. So for me, it was a little bit tedious because I applied very late, because I came here in July. And then, you know, you just have August and September school. And so I was a little bit hesitant to apply for this job. And it was also a maternity cover. But in the end, I did. And I got the job. When I spoke to my principal, she would have said to me that when she first saw my resume, because all of my things would have been coming from Jamaican schools, like all of my experience, my years of teaching. And so she was saying to herself, like, she's wondering if I'm actually in Canada. So, but she decided to call the phone number, and voila, after speaking, going through my interviewing stages, I would have gotten the job. So I always recommend you going onto these school sites and just applying through there, because chances are they're going to go directly to the principals or persons who you want to see a resume. Sometimes when you go through different sites, maybe like even Indeed or others that they might have, nowadays, persons or these sites are using AI to just go through your resume, to just look at various things to say, okay, would this person qualify? And I always say, especially when as an immigrant coming into this country, you just want someone to see your resume and you just want a chance to talk for yourself. That's what it really is. So I recommend you doing that. Go directly onto these websites and apply. I think it really is your best shot. And also networking in that little bit of gray area as well, because sometimes you're working at a school and let us say they have a maternity cover or something of the sort, and they need someone for a short period of time, maybe like 6 months, 8 months, to a year even, and they're posting these postings and they're like, oh, they can't find anybody or nobody's applying, and then internally they'll say, okay, do you know anybody that is qualified? So networking in which persons know about you, know who you are, could recommend you to someone else is always a plus. So I know sometimes they have these networking events where you can go talk to different people. No matter what it is, just as long as you're actually trying to get yourselves out there, do not be afraid of doing that. So as it relates to you now having your certification and trying to find a job, that is what I would recommend within the teaching system that we have here. Okay, now once you are in, I want to now move into some of the things that you might not expect, especially coming outside. Now for me, I'll say in Jamaica, one of the integral things that you'll find in our educational system will be lesson plans. And these are things that you can actually get fired for if you do not have your lesson plans. And so for me being there, I found it very, very, very tedious. It was something that I did not like to do, because it's like if I had 7 classes, I had to do 7 different lesson plans, because it's like it's 7 different classes, even if it's the one general subject, because this class might have students who are like this or like that. And I found it to be so tedious and something that took up so much of my time that I could be used doing other things that are actually going to help students, right? So that is something I really had a problem adjusting to. And I found that when I came here, things are a little bit more structured for you in terms of what you need to do and what is required of you. So I am in British Columbia, and I'm just going to use my grade 9 science class, for example, because in this educational system for BC, everything is listed out for you when you move on to their website. So if I am looking at grade 9 science for British Columbia, I just simply go on to the site for that, and I'm able to see what I should be teaching in entirety for the whole entire school year. That is what I'll follow. I said previously that I'm also in an IB school, so there are different things that I have to integrate for the IB, but it still fits into your regular curriculum. It's not things that you're adding that are out of your comfort range or out of your scope of practice, I would say. It is right along with what is required of you from the British Columbia Teaching Board. So they go hand in hand. So that is where you find everything. Now for your lesson plans. You can have a detailed course outline. So I do that, for example, for grade 11 and my grade 12 chemistry classes. Those are really, really heavy classes, and they're moving into their IB exams after that 2-year period. So I have everything listed in my course outline for every single unit, what is covered under the unit, all of their labs, all of their assignments, all of their worksheets, all of their exams, dates to expect, everything for the entire year. And so that is basically my rubric that I will follow. And also I also give these to my students so they can also see where they are in the curriculum, what is expected of them, and the pace that we need to move at to ensure that they're actually finished with everything and prepared for their exams. So that is also very useful. For your other lesson plans, these are things that you don't really have to be grueling over every week. You can really just have a unit plan. We have our unit plan, everything is there. We post everything that we need to do for the unit plan. And as I said, your units can span normally 3 to 4 weeks. So it means that I don't have to sit down every single week and do these plans. I can just have that sorted out for me, and I don't have to be thinking about it back and forth constantly. And that's really, really, really a big help for me, because I don't have to be sitting down using my weekends to do these plans when I should be relaxing, because you're coming out of a whole week of teaching, and that really sometimes really takes a toll on you, because it's not just teaching. It's the management, it's the marking of the things, it's the meetings, a lot of things, coming to being a teacher. And so I really, really, really appreciate that. When I look at a plan now, I don't feel stressed out. Like, I'm relaxed, I know what I need to do, I get it done for a certain period of time, and I just move on. So that was something that was just always there, like behind it. This is so important. And I appreciate that in this country, they really place focus on the quality of work that you're doing. And of course, the quality of work will translate then into your results. And I really, really, really appreciate that. So that's my second point. And this now brings me into my third point, which would be classroom management. No, again, sometimes when you come from a different country and you come into this country, there are things that you have to adjust to, especially as it relates to a more relaxed system and how we talk about discipline and things that are allowed. There are certain things that we might see in Jamaica that you're not going to see here. The kids are different. They will give you the respect. Yes, sometimes kids will be kids and they will talk. But for example, in Jamaica, having a dean of discipline is not necessary here, because if you have an issue, you just send the person or the student to the principal and it is handled for you. You're not really placed in a situation where you have to be the disciplinarian. For example, the principal is there to ensure that everything goes smoothly. And you also see the principal walking around the school to different times of the day. They're always on. Every classroom will have our own telephone. So basically, they're always there. So whatever issue, you just call and they're there right away, or you can send the kids. So that's a more relaxed system for us. And it also helps us to bridge that gap with the parents as well, when you have the principal being able to step in and to help you to do this. Well, as a teacher, it will be necessary for you to always manage your class, meaning that you shouldn't have kids all over the place, right? They should be actively engaging in work, and you're able to set the standard for your kids. At least I can speak for myself in the private system. This is what I would have seen. The kids really do come to class and they're so focused and dedicated on doing well. And that also helps us to manage them. And I can never say I had an issue where students were so disrespectful to me. If something happens, I talk to them, they apologize, and we move on. So it also helps to create a relationship with the students where they understand, and I always say this, that we're always friendly with our students, but they understand that we're not friends. And that is really something that you're able to do here, because you have that level of respect for teachers. And I always appreciate that. Even as it relates to the parents, you always have that level of respect. They want to hear what you have to say, because they know that being in your classroom is really a stepping stone for their kids to move into their professions. So I'll say that it's something for me that I really, really appreciate being in this system. And that also brings me into parent communication. So normally for us here, we have parent conferences twice for the year. So for example, when the new school year starts, we'll have one in October, and then normally we have one in April. For the school year, we will have a total of 3 report cards going out to the parents, and so you're able to speak with them twice. But it doesn't end there. Parents are always accessible to us. We can always send emails, we can have them come in, and I will say, for me, I really see the difference, and I'll say the investment on not blaming teachers, but that parents work with us. And how do I see this? If I see an issue, it's always recommended that you reach out to the parents at that time, because you don't want to wait until the report cards come and the student, for example, that says failing your class, and then the parents are going to say, well, I haven't heard from you all term or all year, so what is going on here? And so the parents will hold us also accountable. And so for me, I'm holding myself accountable, because I know that I have parents who are willing to work with me, and so it's my responsibility to reach out to them. And I've not had a bad experience so far. They really, really work with us, because they understand even our position as teachers, that sometimes it can be stressful having like a lot of kids to deal with, and so they really come in and they really give us that support. And I'll say I really, really appreciate that. I don't have to fight them. Even for parent conference, normally it's a day for my last ones, I've had to schedule like different days because I have so many parents coming in. They want to meet you. They see me for the first time. They want to meet you. They want to talk to you. They want to talk about their child, the expectations, like how the child has been doing. Especially if the child would have struggled with your subject in the past. They want to see like, what can you do? Like, how can we work together to get the kids to where they need to be? They reach out to you for textbook suggestions. So many things. And I really appreciate that support because it really takes the heavy weight off of you, knowing that you have parents who are home who are just as invested in their child as you are. And so I really appreciate that there. All right, on to my next point in terms of teaching here. I want to talk about the work-life balance. Now, in teaching, persons from the outside, they'll say, oh my gosh, teachers have so many breaks, Now we're on summer break. Then we have Christmas break. And being in this country, like almost, I'll say every month we have a break because of how the holidays are scheduled in this country. And so persons might see it that way. But trust me, being in the system where you're constantly going and going, that break is necessary. But outside of what is the norm for us, something else that is new for me coming here would be our Prodi days. So those are your professional development days. While I was in Jamaica, yes, we had these days, but normally it would be something like after school or like half a day and then you leave. Here, we have days slotted out for them, and they're also dictated, some of them by the province and some of them by the independent schools. So you have different Prodi days that we have to attend, and these are really slated to build us as teachers, talk about issues that we might have, talk about your subject, hear from other teachers, see what's new, see what's going on. And that is so helpful. And so sometimes they do this over like a long weekend. So sometimes you might have a holiday on a Monday. So you might see where like a Friday, you might have a Prodi. So it brings you into that long weekend so you can have that extra day to rest. But at the same time, that's a day where you don't have to be thinking about schoolwork. The kids are also off school. And so you have a lot more time to just sit and engage and learn and see what's new in your profession. So that is something I would always praise them for. You are so supported there. I can't say that there's an instance where I feel lost in any way because I have so much support in this system. So I really appreciate those Prodi days. Outside of that, I want to stick a pin on something that's also new for me here, and that is guest teaching. So in this country, you have the opportunity to be a guest teacher. And as a matter of fact, I've spoken to teachers who are not in the school system, but they are guest teachers. What does that mean? Every day, as you know, we have sick days for the year. You have a certain amount of sick days, certain amount of personal days, days for other things that you might be given in your contract. And so these are for you, you're able to take them. When you're in Jamaica, sometimes having these days can feel like a burden. It's like if you take these days, it's like something is wrong with you taking your days, right? Sometimes it can feel like so burdensome, but here it is really encouraged. And encouraged also in that if I am sick for today, I don't need to worry about how my classes are going to go. They bring in who is called a guest teacher. That teacher will be there for the entire day. While they will have to do some aspect of your lesson for you, they normally just ask us to let's leave a plan, what you do for the entire day. And they'll have someone just ensure that everything is done and everything is packaged there for you. If you have a test, these persons are able to do that. You have left to work on our management system because most things here are done online. So we send other kids their assignments online. Rarely we print anything if it's not like a worksheet for me. For my subject, they have a lot of worksheets that they have to do, or like a unit exam. But anything else, their labs, everything, they're submitted online. And so through my portal, even if I'm not going to be there for the day, I can just leave work and the guest teacher will ensure that everything is done properly for the day and I don't need to worry about it. And so I don't feel stressed taking my days because they're meant for you and they encourage it. Like they're like, we want you to be your best, so take your day so you can feel and come back your best. And for me, that was such an eye-opener, and it really shows you a lot of who you can become as a teacher when you have a supportive administration behind you. And so I will always praise my administration. Like anywhere I go to any meetings, any questions, I always talk about my principal because she is really that girl. Okay, so my next point now. So yes, we're here, yes, we're teaching, and we have all of these balances and things that will push us through to ensure that we're performing well. As it relates to your classroom, sometimes We always hear about persons doing things in the classroom and you're taking money from your own pocket. Whether it could be buying markers, buying dusters, buying pencils, buying this or whatever supplies that the kids need. I'll say here, you are properly supported and they have a budget for these things. So I have unlimited amount of supplies, I'll say, and this is generally across the board, unlimited amount of supplies for my classroom. I don't have to worry about it. I just call and say, okay, I need this. And they're like, okay, come and pick it up. As a matter of fact, we're now ending the school year. We just ended the school year. And before we left, we had a checklist. And on the checklist, it said that we need to complete our requisition forms for whatever supplies we need for the next year so that they can be purchased over the summer. So when we come back for September, everything is there for us. And this is something that we can do throughout the year. If something comes up and we need to purchase it, it's no problem. We purchase it. We do a requisition form, the school just reimburses us our money, and you normally get it reimbursed at around the same time as your salary. So everything that you could need to become a successful teacher, everything is there. Like, you literally have no excuses. The only thing I'll say that you might have a pushback on will be for like classroom decorations. So let us say you have a classroom and you want it to be fully pink. Okay, the school will not fund that. So for example, for me this year, I am getting a new classroom. And so I want to do like various science posters, that they look like a real science room. And I would have spoken to my principal about it. And as I said, it's not really something that's normally budgeted for. But I was given a tiny budget to just make my classroom feel more alive and not just looking at white walls, right? So I'm grateful for that. So that is something also that you are well supported in. You don't need to feel like everything has to be coming directly from your pocket. Things are there and they're provided for you to perform at your best for your students. Alrighty. Okay. Now, other expenses, I want to talk about things that you might see coming out of your salary and you're wondering what are these things. So one thing that you pay for yearly is your teaching license. You can pay for it directly through the website that you would have gotten your license through, or the school can do it for you, which for me is just easier for me when the school just deducts it from my salary and is paid to the regulating body. And you see on your salary that will say, okay, teacher licensing fee, and then you'll see the amount taken out and they'll send it in for you. So that is no problem. And that is done once a year. So once you paid for the year, you don't have to think about it again till the following year. Another expense that I wanted to talk about is our union fee. So for example, in Jamaica, we have JTA, and normally every month, I believe it was 1% is taken from your salary to pay into the JTA, which is our teachers union there. Here, we just pay a flat fee for the entire year, and that's just it. Because we're in the independent school system and I'm also at a Christian school, we have our own regulating body. And so one time for the year, you will, normally it's at the beginning of the school year, that they will deduct this fee and it's paid to them, and then I don't need to think about it again until the rest of the year. And that fee goes into things that you're actually seeing, right? So again, I spoke about the Pro D days earlier. Because we're also in a Christian school, Christian community of schools, they have their own Pro D days. So normally in November, for a period of like, I believe it's 2 days, we don't have any teaching, kids are on break, and we go to those Pro D days. Normally it's at a university and you sit down, you go to various sessions, and these are all put on by the union. So you are well supported by them too. Any issues, we have a union rep at the school, we can just go talk and they will come. If you have like a teacher's day, no matter what it is, they will come and support. As a matter of fact, at my school this year, they provided a grant. So there's a grant that schools can apply for within the Christian society. If you feel that there's something that your school benefit from, especially the teachers, you can apply for a grant and they'll just give it to you if you're approved. So the grant is $1,000, and for my school this year, we got the grant for a soup day. So it means that once a month, a teacher would have volunteered to cook soup and then you would have been reimbursed. Of course, I did our Jamaican chicken soup and it was a hit, okay? So that is something that I'll say. Whatever you're putting your money into, you really see these things working for you. It doesn't matter what aspect it is. So that is something also that you can look out for. Now, my next point, I wanted to point out some of the biggest mistakes that as teachers we might make. And so the first one I'll say is not learning the system that you're in. So again, we're coming from a different country. If you're looking at this video and you're talking about independent certification, for example, we're not trained in Canada and things are different. So I would advise that you try to learn the system and try to transition into the system. Don't allow it to be a mindset where you're constantly like, well, in my country we did this, or in my country we did that. You are now in a different country and you have to learn to adjust. Kids will have different needs, they'll have different issues, they'll have different situations where you might be needed. So learn to just adjust to these situations, and to the best of your ability, try to get yourself to be that point of contact where your kids are comfortable. One thing I'll point out is that, especially for the kids here, some of them, they really do need someone just to talk to, and you might be that person, and you don't know what a life you could change. I'll say so far for me, one of the biggest things, if someone were to ask me, I'll never attribute a student's success to myself, because I know that they're fully capable and they have the potential. But something I'll say is that in terms of inspiring students, because you can see the potential that they don't see, I'll always talk about this because I had a student in grade 10. And in grade 10 here, you go through all sciences just the same. So grade 11 and 12 is when you specialize into what you want to do. So again, in Jamaica, specialization first starts 10, and then 11 you do CXC. For them here, it's actually 11 and 12, and then you do the IB exam, for example. And so for me, he hated, for example, chemistry, and he wanted nothing to do with it. And so because we're doing all sciences in one, so we do physics, chemistry, biology, and then at the end we do a little bit of earth science, as well as we incorporate First Nations principles into science. And so as soon as we hit the chemistry aspect, he's like, oh, no, I hate this, I will never do this. And I spoke to him and I said, okay, even if you hate it, I want you to just have an open mind towards the subject. We're just going to go through it slowly. Let's just see how you do. If you don't want to do this next year, totally fine. But at least for this year, I want you to try your best. And he did phenomenal. And so to the point that he's now in my IB, my DP chemistry class, and he's still doing exceptional. And this end of school year, and it's also a practice here too, I'll say, at the end of the school year, kids will give you like little gift cards, or even the parents, and that's also something that is good to receive. I always tell the kids that it's not something that we're entitled to, but it's always nice to feel appreciated. And I always say that. No, so for the end of this school year, he gave me a card, so a gift card and a card, and on the card he was writing like a chemistry cartoon, but the writing on it, like when I read it, I literally cried, because he was like, I hated this so much, and you're the teacher that inspired me to just take a leap and to do this, and now I'm so happy that you did that, because now he's able to go into a profession that requires it, and he's just so happy that he actually listened, right? So we have moments like those where I'm like, this is where I should be, right? So I'll always talk about that. So transitioning into the system is something that I'll say, come with a fresh mindset. You are here to learn as well. The beauty about teaching is that you are learning while you are teaching. And there's so many things I have learned from the students, different things for me to like, and then they become comfortable with you, and you can have a situation where kids will come to your class just because of how you make them feel, right? And you want to make them feel welcomed. And I will say the kids here, they really put themselves in positions for you to be able to do that. They literally want what you have to give as a teacher. And it's also just that alone gives you a good environment for you to put yourself out there as a teacher as well. So that's what I'll say. No, with everything, you will have challenges, and the challenges sometimes, again, it might be hard for you to transition. For me, I've been just going through a full year, and of course, there are things that I would have picked up on, things that I'm like, all right, coming into the next school year, I want to do better, or just different areas that you might want to push up on. Now, throughout the day for teachers here, you'll have your full schedule. For my school, when I started, they had a 6-block work day. We have now cut down to 5, and normally teachers will have 1 prep session per day. And so for prep sessions, it's really for you to go through and to do your marking. Now in Jamaica, I remember sometimes when we have our prep sessions, they were not preps for us because you had to fill in for a teacher. So if teachers were sick, you had to substitute for that teacher. And as I said earlier, it's different here. If you're sick, they have guest teachers. No one else has to worry about that. Unless someone really cannot come and they can't find anybody to come, you can just put it through the email, And the good thing about it is if someone covers you, it actually builds up. So the amount of blocks, so let us say they would have done 5 blocks of coverage, they will receive 1 day where they can just not come to school. It's like another personal day. So things here are not forced on you. You are asked and you're asked your opinion. I was so surprised even for this coming year, we have new contracts that they were working on to just put in different policies, different benefits, etc. for the teachers. And I was so surprised that we were called to a meeting to ask how we feel about these policies. Like, do we think that there are changes that can be made? How do we feel about things that are coming to the school? What's our opinion? And the head of school and the principal actually met with us. And for me, I felt that was so inclusive, like they generally care about you and you doing well as a teacher. Because they know that without teachers, of course, the school cannot perform. The school will not be a school, right? And so they allow just anybody in the school, you just feel like you're an equal person. And I always say, I remember being in my school system, it's like, I don't even know if I know the first name of my principal back then. But here, everyone is on a first name basis. Like you're all on the same level. No one puts their position above you. No one allows you to feel that way. Everyone comes at your level and they talk to you like you're a human being. And that is something else that I'll say I appreciate so much, because it's like you're valued and you're seen in the system. And I will always stand up for that. Always. So that is something that I would really, really talk about. So yeah, it's really a situation where you are just there and you really can see how things can be done. So again, going back to those prep sessions, normally, again, so I said, we're not forced here to basically be substitutes. You have your prep sessions to do marking or normally whatever you need to do in terms of your schoolwork. So as I said earlier, especially for my chemistry with my older kids, it's like a lot to do in terms of normally in this country, you have, especially in the IB, you have 2 levels that you can do. So you have standard level and higher level. So standard level, basically, I'll describe it as you're doing a subject and you're really scratching the surface. If you're a high level student, you're expected to do all of the work, all of the more in-depth information for that subject. And so normally for my subject for chemistry, we have multiple worksheets per unit, multiple quizzes, multiple unit exams, multiple labs, and so it's always something to mark. And so having a prep a day really allows me to do that. And I also have my younger kids in the grades 8 and 9, and they are not left out. If anyone can tell you about me, I give work, okay? Because I want the kids to come into the system where when they move up, they're not so challenged or they're not just thrown into a system of a lot of work without them being prepared for it. And so all of that, of course, has to be marked and given back to the students. And these kids, I'll say they're very anxious. If you do a test now, mind you, by the end of the day, you might see one and they're like, how did I do? I'm like, you just did the test last block. I need time to mark, So those are things. So in your prep sessions, you have the ability to go through probably a little planning that you wouldn't have done or just marking. So time is made available to you and whatever else time you need. So for example, if I have a lot of labs, so normally we have IAs coming up for the kids who are graduating, they're going into their IB exams, and you can ask for discretionary days where you can have to mark those because they're very lengthy labs and the kids need this, right? So it's an integral part, like 20% of their grade. So these things have to be marked and the grades have to be submitted, right? And then of course you are moderated. So if you have a certain amount of students, automatically you are moderated for your subject. So someone else externally has to also mark your work. So it's very important that you take your time and you do that. That is no different for me from when I was in Jamaica, because being a science teacher, you'd always have someone coming in to moderate your labs just to see if you're marking fairly, if you're marking correctly, or if you understand what to do, right? And being a new teacher in the system there, I really appreciated that. And I'll say coming here, it's like, again, you're a new teacher because you're in a different system. And so having someone there also, because we have our own IB coordinator too. And so we can always go to him and talk about things. He can show us different things. We have the IBS system that we can go to for samples, look at how to do things. So as I said earlier, having resources is like so important. And being a teacher here, these are not things that really and truly, even if someone is telling you, you have to be in it to believe it. And so having been in it for a year now and a little bit, I would say it's one of the best systems for me personally, being in the private system. Like you can really feel like you can breathe being a teacher, right? So You, as I said, you have your summer breaks, whatever breaks you have. For me at my school, we have 3 weeks for Christmas. Normally it's 2, and we're still able to get all the things done. At the beginning of the school year, we have a spiritual retreat where because I said it's Christian school, so the kids will get to go. The older kids, they go to a different retreat than the smaller kids, I mean. And you're able to go and you're able to just interact with the kids, talk about God, talk about all of these things. And it's such an environment where you are just loved and the kids are loved. And if you ask them, leaving the school, what is something that you remember, that is something that they always talk about. And so we're able to really nurture the kids and we learn with them as they're growing as well. So I always talk about that. Something else that it was also very new to me is our retirement fund, so the RRSP for us. So of course in Jamaica, every month your retirement is taken from your salary and it's just there. So it's taken for you from your salary every month, and sometimes it's not even like a large amount, because if you really think about it, if you look at inflation and different things, how things are really going, by the time you retire in Jamaica, especially as a teacher, you have to have more than that retirement, because trust me, it won't be a lot. And I remember one year I was being moderated and the gentleman came and, he could barely walk. And I said, you are a teacher in the system now and, you can barely walk. And he told me that, he retired. But when he saw his first retirement check, it was like $20,000. And being an adult, how can you live on that? It's not possible. And so he had to go back into the school system at his old age, could barely move, because he needed that money to survive, right? Now here, you have the opportunity, of course, to just do your savings. You have your TFSA, which is your tax-free savings account, where you can buy into your stocks. You can do different things to invest in your future. But for your retirement fund, especially at my school, to a certain amount, you're given a maxed amount that you can contribute, and the school will match an amount. And you're actually encouraged to do this. So if the school match, for example, 8%, that's the maximum, I would encourage you to put in the maximum. So if, let us say, you're putting in $200 every 2 weeks, because we get paid every 2 weeks, the school is also matching that $200. So $400 is going into a retirement fund for the 2 weeks. And then every 2 weeks, that is the process, right? And so that money is guarded by a particular company, and then they will then go and invest it into the stock market. And you can actually go into your profile, you can see where they're investing the money to, how much money you are at, how much you would have contributed, how much you would have grown. And for me, just being in the system for 1 year, I have seen like so much growth. And that is something that I'm like, even if some persons have different things to say, if there's nothing else, I would have said I would have learned here. I would have learned really different things that we have out there for us, not even as teachers, but general people, right? That you can use to invest in your future. And so that is something that I'll always do. So if it is that you're coming into the private system and you're offered your retirement with your RSP, they're going to ask you how much. Always try to go with the maximum. In your account where you'll manage these things, you have a certain amount that you can actually put into it per year. However, even doing the maxed amount, you will not max it out, right? And so I would always encourage persons, if that's an option given to you, invest in it and invest to the max, especially if your employer is going to match it. It's like free money, so why not, right? So go straight head into your RSP. It's something that you will thank yourself for. If it is that you need to withdraw the money, you can. Of course, you will be taxed for it. However, having a system where it's invested into the stock market and you're growing, really and truly, even if you are taxed a little bit, like, okay, you have to give the government something, that's fine. You would have had something that you can put your money in, and this is something that will stay there for a long time. I remember my head of school, he was working in America for some time, and he was like, when he looked in his retirement in America and his retirement fund here, like, he's so shocked, because there's just so much there, and he's not even anywhere near retirement as yet, and he's so happy. And so that is something that I would have really learned. So if you're coming into the system and you're offered this retirement, please take it, max it out, max the amount that you can put in it every single 2 weeks. And of course, as I said, I will go on rotation. So every 2 weeks, it is being pulled from your salary and being placed into your retirement. Ensure that you jump on that. Alrighty. Now my next point, I would have spoken about this a little bit earlier at the beginning of the video, but I just want to point it out again as it relates to where you can get jobs and the hiring process again. So I just want to say, just put yourselves out there. It's never a situation where persons are not going to hire you because you're international. As a matter of fact, if there's a shortage of a teacher for that subject, then you're available and you're perfectly capable. So don't be scared. Honestly, the worst thing someone can tell you is no, and that's just it. Just take your no and move on to the next place because life goes on, right? So just ensure you're putting yourselves out there. Now, I want to talk about, as I'm coming to a close in this video, some of the questions that I would have gotten in my previous video that I did. And if you haven't watched it, I'm going to pin it here so you guys can go back and watch that video. Now, persons are asking me the difference between the COQ, which is your certification of qualification, and the independent certification or your letter of permission. I have an independent teaching certificate because I was not schooled in Canada. So I have my experience from outside. Based on my subjects, my certification is given to me in those subjects. It means that because I'm in an independent system, I can only teach what is on that certification. And so I am certified in the STEM area, okay? So I can only teach in those areas. For your certification of qualification, you can then move into the public system. I'm not able to do that. I'm only going to be able to do that if I go back and do more schooling here, which is going to lead me to my next point. I'm going to talk about that soon. So, independent certificate, independent school, especially if you're coming from the outside. COQ, certification of qualification, you can move into the independent system or into the public system. It doesn't matter wherever you find a job, as long as you have that, you're going to be able to work. Now, coming here, I'll say, even for my principal, when I spoke to her, because originally she's from Ireland and she would have done all of her teacher training abroad in England. And when I spoke to her, there's a regulation body that we have here called the TQS. And so they regulate all of basically your schooling, and they put you on a certain scale. Now, the reason why as international teachers, you might want to move into the Canadian system to be recognized as a Canadian teacher, honestly, is really because of the salary. The benefits that you get are the same. Everything else will be the same, but the salary will not be the same. It means that even if you have more experience, you know your subject pretty well, it doesn't matter what it is, you are going to get paid less than someone who would have gone to school in Canada. That's just how the system works, right? Sorry. So it means that for us coming in from outside, what we really want to do is to get on the same salary scale. When you go to the TQS, they will regulate your different schooling. And I remember my principal, she told me that when she went through the regulatory body, she would have been placed on the 3rd point on the salary scale, which is the lowest point that you can be placed and also be employed. So it means that that's the lowest place that you'll be placed for the salary grade, okay? Now, when she moved into the independent system, she was received better, and so she was able to become a regular teacher, and then she would have transitioned into becoming the principal, right? So that's for her. So for us, you're coming here and you're given an offer, and they'll say, okay, this is salary. As it relates to salary, I won't give you like a ballpoint, because really and truly, wherever you go, it might be different, and also the schools might be different. Different independent schools might pay you more, they might pay you less. So I'm not going to give you a ballpark. I'm just going to be talking about the different grades that you will have. In Jamaica, normally our scale is maxed out at 10, I believe it was. Here it's the same thing, you're maxed out at 10, and that is dependent on your years of teaching. Being an independent teacher, even if we max out our years, the 10 years, you will never get to the same salary scale as someone who studied here. Because they studied here, they're going to always have a higher point on the salary scale, meaning that they're recognized as teachers, okay? So if you have a master's degree, you are placed on a different scale, of course. If you just have a regular bachelor's in education, you're on a different scale. If you have a master's, you're placed on a different scale, especially if you have one in your field. There are different ways of doing this. And so I want to point out, that's going to be my last point. Someone was asking me, if you have this kind of a degree, how do you transition then into the Canadian educational system? So, for example, I'm going to be using myself. I have a bachelor's in biological sciences, not in anything to do with education, but I have been teaching for a couple of years. Because of that, it means that I can then now go and do more schooling if I so required. And this is a part that you'll have to take. Being a independent teacher, again, as I said, you're on a different salary scale. So I'm on a certain salary scale for the amount of years that I would have been in teaching. That's fine. if I want to move into the Canadian salary scale where I'll make more money for my experience, and that is something that I always point out with this country too, you really are paid for your experience and your qualification. They do not shy on that, right? Now, if you have a regular bachelor's degree and you go and do a master's in education, for example, you are still not classified as a regular teacher, okay? There's a pathway that you have to take. To be classified as a regular teacher is either that you're going to go back and do a different bachelor's, which is your BEd, Bachelor's of Education. Then you'll be classified as a teacher. Then you can move on to your master's, etc., etc. There are some persons who would have done it the other way. So, and I have a co-worker now who she's Canadian. However, her bachelor's would have been in biblical studies, I believe she told me. And then she went to do a master's in education. However, she's still not classified as a teacher. So now she has to be going back, rallying back, trying to now do a BEd to be placed on the correct category of scale. When you have a bachelor's degree, it puts you on scale 6. And when you max that out, you can easily make 6 figures here in Canada. Even if you go on a different scale, let's say you have a bachelor's degree, but then you have a master's with a teaching practicum aspect of it, you get placed on 5+, okay? It means that you can then also, when you max out that scale, you can also make 6 figures. If you're a regular teacher in Canada, trained in Canada, and you have your BEd, regular teaching degree, you start on scale 5. Then you can work your way up. For us as independent teachers, we are placed on scale 4, and then you work your way up. So again, let us say you have what I have. You just have a regular degree, but you have been teaching and you want to move on. For me, I am actually able to do a master's in education, right? I could do that, as I said earlier. I still wouldn't be classified as a teacher, but it will move me from my regular scale onto a different scale, which is what I really want. Because really for me, what we're really looking to maximize, especially as immigrants, is the salary, okay? That's what is important to us. However, they have another pathway, and this pathway is offered through, here in BC, is a Simon Fraser University. I have been looking at it, and it's called a PLP program. With the PLP program, as long as you have been teaching in the British Columbia system for 2 years, it's like a transitional program where they'll give you more courses to do, still recognizing your previous bachelor's degree. They will assess it to see the courses that you have and what is your teachable. You're going to ask to provide 2 teachables. So for example, for me, being a science teacher, I could have chosen biology or chemistry for my teachable. Then your PLP is going to be guided towards science. And normally this program is 16 months. It's like a bridge. So with this bridge, once you'd have completed this bridge along with your bachelor's degree, you're going to be able to apply now to the Teaching Regulatory Board here in British Columbia, the TRB, and then you will be classified as a regular Canadian teacher being placed on that scale. So it means that there are options here, things that you can do. The only thing for the PLP is that, as I said, you have to have a minimum of 2 years working in the British Columbian system. They will not budge on that. For me, recognizing now I only have like a year completed for this school year, but I did do a little bit of a maternity cover earlier, but I'm still not at my 2 years as yet, so I cannot apply to that program. But it's something that I will be looking into because I want to transition out of the independent scale, right? And so I'm also looking into a master's degree because if I could also try to do that while my 2 years is still being processed, because I won't complete it until probably like 2027 to get my full 2 years here, I really don't want to waste time. And one of the primary reasons for that is that when you come here and you're given this certification by the regulatory board, you have a certain period of time they're giving to you in which you need to transition over into a regular teaching category. So for my independent certificate, I have until 2029 to transition over into a regular teaching category here. So it means that you have to get on the ball. You have to try to do something. And that's why I always say, just get your foot out there. If you're applying, once you have that evaluation stage on pat or it's down pat for you, try to apply to jobs, because I got my job just having that evaluation stage, still waiting for the decision. I didn't get it as yet, but I still got the job. So because of these different things that you're gonna have to do, and persons, even if you are here, you're gonna realize that it doesn't matter what profession that you're in. Once you're coming from outside, most times your qualifications are not recognized here in Canada. It's like you're coming here and you're starting from ground zero. And if you come here or you're planning to come here, that is something that you're gonna have to adjust yourself to, right? You always hear persons talking about, sometimes if you look up these things, You might have been a doctor in your country, and if you come here, your Uber driver is a doctor. They're not working in a hospital, because when they come here, Canada is saying to them, you have to go back to school, right? You have to show us that you actually know what to do, even though you were probably a doctor in your country for like 10, 15 years. So things are not so accepted. So you just have to understand that coming here, you are starting from ground zero and you don't know everything. Okay, you have to learn the system, you have to integrate into the system, and you have to want to be in the system, right? I'll always say teaching is not for everyone. It truly is a calling. Of course, if you feel properly compensated and you're able to do your regular activities, you're able to live, then it's something that you might adjust to in any time. But outside of that, if teaching is not a love for you, it's always going to be a system where, well, I'm just doing it to survive. And you know what? Even if you're someone like that and you're just looking to get into teaching because of that, or you just want to integrate into society, it's always a good start, I'll say, because education, as I said, while you're teaching kids, you're also teaching yourself. And then it might become something that you fall in love with, right? You see so many kids on a daily basis, you're interacting with so many people, and there's so much for you to learn as well. So it's something that you might just start to do, and by you look, you love it. I know someone left a comment very similar. So he would have studied in India and he was asking me the process of going through these things. What do I think? And so I'll say again, for that question, there is a way, there is a pathway that you can move through. But in order to go through that pathway, you need to start to work. Okay, you have to be in the system. You have to get your experience. It doesn't matter what job you do here. One of the ultimate things that you hear persons asking you for is Canadian experience. And what they mean is that the experience that you have garnered working here. It doesn't matter how many years you'd have had on the outside. It is irrelevant at this point, okay? All they're interested in is the experience that you have here. And even if you are here and you're trying to get into the educational system and you have to be doing other jobs, do not be deterred, okay? Especially if you're an immigrant and you're coming here, sometimes you have to start out being a cleaner. You have to start out working in cafeteria. You have to start out picking up garbage on the roadside, cleaning people's toilets, whatever, because you know what you want at the end of the day and it's a stepping stone for you. But not because you can't get in it right away, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. Always have information is out there. Do your research. Look how you can move into things. If you need help, reach out to people. Under this video, if you have a question, there's something that you were not clear on, something that you need help with and I can help you, then I'm happy to do that. Leave the comment, it doesn't matter what it is, and I'll get back to you. And so with that, if you guys have any questions, anything that you'd like me to talk about in another video, or anything that you want to leave down in the comment, I will be in the comments. I will see what you're saying and I'll be more than happy to respond to you. And this video will be the second of many in this teaching series because there are so many things I have to say I could talk about as relates to teaching here. I'm just encouraging you guys as fellow educators to put yourselves out there. There are questions that persons would have asked me, like, can I use this to actually come to Canada? And I will answer that to say that I'm not sure of different pathways. There might be pathways I've heard about in Toronto, but I'm not in the Toronto area. I'm in Vancouver, and in this province in British Columbia, things work a little bit differently. But if you're able to actually go out there and find pathways to get yourselves here, you want a better life for your families, go and do it, okay? Go do the research, talk to people. There are lots of people there who are willing to help you. A lot of free information. Do not get pulled into paying for everything, okay? Don't need to pay for everything. Go and read, find out things for yourself. See what is out there for you. There's a big world out there. And if you're not happy with where you are, always say we have one life to live, right? So go and live it, okay? And if coming here is your dream, don't give up on that dream because there's a space for everyone, especially in education, right? And so, yeah, I'll end the video there. Again, if you so desire, please subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, leave a like, share with someone who this video might help, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!